I'm sure everybody knows who Gretchen is, but I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her because she's amazing. She has been an advocate for women, survivors of gender-based violence, and immigrant communities for over 2 decades. She has served in the Office of the Attorney General, the Kentucky Association of Sexual Assault Programs, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the Center for Women and Families, and the Backside Learning Center, and now leads the Office for Women for Metro Government. Through her work in the nonprofit and government sector, she has represented survivors of violence, championed legislative reforms, trained professionals at the local, state, regional, and national level, created coalitions, managed state and federal grants, and overseen project development and fundraising. She has taught as an adjunct professor at the University of Louisville and Brandeis School of Law and continues to consult at the regional and national level on human trafficking. In 2019, she was inducted into the Kentucky Civil Rights Hall of Fame for her work on behalf of women's rights. So she's going to talk to us today about the Office for Women to elevate the status of women through education, advocacy, and legislation. She's going to tell us about recent legislative successes, detailed plans for initiatives to foster women's economic development and leadership in 2023, and tell us how we can get involved and help. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Tricia, and to Kristen, and to Lisa. And I just want to say, first of all, it's wonderful to be back physically in this space. Second, it's really powerful to be in a space that is entirely led by women right now, right? Like, look at how women are leading the bar in this state and in this city. So it's really wonderful also to be back in Louisville. I started my career here at the Center for Women and Families 23 years ago now as a baby lawyer doing immigration law, and it's really wonderful to be back in the community. I came back to Louisville a couple of years ago, but then COVID hit, so I didn't get to see folks as well. So I'm really always excited to partner and continue to build work collaboratively with folks. So if you have ideas for the Office for Women, definitely reach out. So I want to give you a sense of the scope of our office. Just by a show of hands, how many people already knew that Louisville, that your tax dollars fund an Office for Women? Okay, a few people, right? So it's been in existence since 1991. Then Mayor created it. Marcia Roth was the director at the time. Her first intern was none other than our new mayor, Craig Greenberg. So he was an intern. He was the very first intern at the Office for Women. And very quickly in the scope of the office, she was looking at primarily being tasked with looking at women's economic status. There was a lot of work in the early 90s on women in the workplace and pay equity. But there was a high-profile domestic violence murder-suicide that occurred in 1991, impacting 2 teachers, public high school teachers, who really galvanized the community and led to a lot of reforms, led in no small part by the Office for Women on domestic violence and on VINE, which is victim identification and notification every day, which some of you may use with your clients, that is piloted all over the world. I say that to you also to say that very quickly in the office, there was a sense that for women to thrive, and indeed for communities to thrive, you have to look holistically. And so if women weren't safe, they couldn't thrive economically. 23 years later, I'm also still looking at those entrenched problems of domestic violence, sexual violence, the high rate of domestic violence murders in our city, especially impacting Black women, which is really a call for concern. And I'm saying, you know what, we need to maybe rethink those and also be thinking about women's economic status as a way to ameliorate some of those issues. So I give you that history. I was also a 15-year-old, and my teacher was the one who shot his wife and himself in that domestic violence murder, suicide. So I really feel like this is a circling back around, and it's a continued call to action, and it's still sobering that we have to be doing this work to justify really the existence and safety of women, in particular women who are more marginalized by historic racism, by poverty, by other issues. So that's a little bit of kind of the mission of the office. We do the work that we do not through direct service. So while I get calls from constituents, often about domestic violence or housing, I would say those are the top 2 calls from women in the city, mostly I'm looking at systems change. How can we add value? And so we are looking at what are the long-term solutions that we can make. And so that includes legislative work. I've given you our year in review. We collaborate. I'm an office of 1, so I can only work when I partner with you all, and that really usually means I'm asking you to do work for me, so I want to be transparent in that. But it is also very important that we are collaborating with community and doing the work. We have 7 areas of focus as well. So it's not just one area. It's looking at women's social and economic well-being, housing, education. While health is not listed in there, health is impacted by all these social determinants of health, gender-based violence, human trafficking, civic engagement. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, as Tricia said, about what we've done legislatively in the past year, because lawyers like to learn about laws, right? Even if they are local laws at the Metro Council level. And then about some of our priority areas, how we are. I've been in this position for almost a year, and I've learned a lot in the first year about how we can be impactful and how to use the limited resources to have most lasting impact. So here's an example of a few kinds of events we have held in the past, focused on raising awareness of women's status and gender equity. And I'm going to zero in on some of the legislative reforms that we worked on. I've worked in Frankfurt on legislation for many years. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, it's been really hard to get a lot of legislation passed for various reasons. But here at the local level, you have a more immediate, impact. And at the same time that I started at the Office for Women, the Women's Caucus was formed at Metro Council by Councilwoman Paula McCraney, Councilwoman Cassie Chambers Armstrong. So it was a really great example of how organizations of women can partner together and harness energy. So I think of the Women Lawyers Association also as one of the examples of an organization that we could partner with. So we worked on a couple of pieces of legislation, and I'm going to highlight one in particular. And that is that we got Cassie Chambers Armstrong, Councilwoman Cassie Chambers Armstrong sponsored this. Co-sponsor was Councilwoman Nicole George, who's now Deputy Mayor Nicole George in the new administration. Paid leave for domestic violence victims and victims of other crimes who are Louisville Metro government employees, LMG employees. This is a big deal. How many of you all do civil practice, do any kind of, whether it's small claims or big things, right? We know that oftentimes equity means making people whole. And so one of the ways that we know that combating gender-based violence in particular is most effective is to wrap around support to the survivor. And one of the barriers for many survivors is they can't go to meet with a counselor and work on a safety plan, or go to court and get a protective order, or go meet with their detective, or change their kids' schools because they've relocated, or do any other activity that would help keep them safe, because they fear that I can't tell my employer, I might get fired, something might happen. And so we knew that doing paid leave, making sure that women and men as well and other gender diverse individuals would not be harmed by being victims. So they now have 7 days paid leave, which is really progressive. And so we are hoping that that is a model for other workplaces across here. So, push on your law firms to do it. And I will say that the rates of gender-based violence in our community are so high that there are survivors in any space, right? 1 in 3 women in Kentucky, for example. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but I just want to say I think that folks in the room would understand why gender equity is important and what it is. The point I want to underscore, though, is that we have got to address gender equity in Louisville. It is at the heart of many of the persistent issues and problems that are facing our community. High rate of homicides are disproportionately domestic violence homicides, disproportionately impacting Black women because of historic racism, lack of access to resources. We have a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis. That primarily is impacting women, single women, head of households in our community, right? We have persistent pay inequality. We have a crumbling childcare infrastructure that is only going to get worse in 2 years when ARPA funds go away. How many lawyers in the room had difficulty with childcare during the pandemic? Anybody? Right, so almost a third of the people in this room. And these are presumably people with resources. So you think about under-resourced women who may have even fewer options. So we know that we have to address these issues because they impact the entire community. And that's what we're trying very hard at the Office for Women to do. And my call to action to you all early on is to say that if you can raise the status of this work, talk about the need to focus on gender equity in our communities and invest in women, that helps us raise awareness about how this needs to be a central discussion. We need to be asking these questions that, are we having a gender perspective? Do we consider the impact on women? Do we have women at the table who are most impacted, who are making these decisions? So our theme and strategic direction for our office in 2023 is invest in women. I think of that because I think it's a very concrete goal. This means to pour into women. This does not mean that we don't pour into men and boys in our city, but what it means is we know, and global research on this shows, that if you invest in women, if you invest dollars in women, it is far more likely to then be spent on education, health, and growth in the home, thereby leading to higher economic growth in the community. This is good policy, essentially. Even if you don't consider yourself a feminist, even if you don't care about these issues, this is a very workable strategy. So investing in women looks a few different ways. We are investing in women in the Office for Women, pouring into women in civic engagement and leadership. So we're launching the Office for Women Ambassadors training program next Thursday. It's a 6-month leadership training program for women from across the community, very diverse women with diverse lived experiences who will learn about issues impacting women, government services impacting women, nonprofits doing great work empowering women, how to advocate and lobby in Metro Council, how to aspire to serve on boards and commissions, how to start up a business if you're an entrepreneur, with the goal of more women being ambassadors for our work and for government to share the information about what we do, but then being a circular communication loop back to us to advocate and say, hey, in our community, Office for Women, you're not looking at this issue. You need to be addressing this issue. We are investing in girls. We hope to have a girls conference. So this is another call to action. If anybody's interested in that or being a sponsor for a girls conference this summer, we hope to do a conference for girls and non-binary kiddos so that they can work on empowerment and policy and other issues that they would like to do. We do a Women's Equality Day event every year. We also are really focused on implementing gender equity in economic development and workforce development. So oftentimes, I don't know if anybody has ever heard, but there's this idea of pink issues. You hear of the pink tax for diapers and period products. Sometimes they're seen as pink issues. How many people have ever been at their firm or their organization and heard about housekeeping duties? Like maybe that word's gone away, but if you're doing a meeting, who usually does all the work to make the meeting possible, effective, and go? It's often women, right? The labor that women do is often seen as less valued. There's gender segregation in work. And then at the same time, sometimes offices for women have been seen as offices that maybe work on a certain set of issues. We are trying very hard, and I can use your help in doing this, in making sure that gender equity is central to any big initiatives going on in this city, whether they're in the corporate sector, in the nonprofit sector, in the government sector. So that's the big picture, 33,000-foot view. But what I want to look at is a couple things. We are having a gender equity data series. That's wonky sounding, but we know that we need to sometimes get the numbers and the data in there to galvanize action and policy. So our first one was on women's income and housing and home ownership with a gender equity and racial equity focus. The second one is going to be probably in March, and it's going to be on the childcare infrastructure. And so laying out where we are in Louisville, what investments need to be made, what changes need to be made. We're going to be doing a Women's Economics Summit. This is another call to action. This is an idea of a one-stop shop, bringing together all the terrific folks in the community, Goodwill, Kentuckiana Works, Louisville Urban League, Office of Community Resiliency Services, Dress for Success, you name it, all these things in one big space where women can travel through in that day, do a resume, get their job outfit for an interview, get the things that they need, all for women, childcare provided. That's another event that we would like to do that we'll be needing partners and sponsors with. All right, so lastly, I just want to say one more area. If you see, I don't think the Women Lawyers Association did work on this, but if you want to, we can do more. Last year, we were successful in helping to scale the distribution of diapers in the city of Louisville. You all may know, if you have little ones, how expensive diapers are. 1/3 of US families can't afford diapers. It's a barrier to employment. You can't send your kids to childcare without diapers. And so we helped the St. Bernadette Diaper Bank, which distributes to area nonprofits, to double their distribution last year, and also work with Councilwoman Paul McCraney to file a resolution asking Frankfurt legislature to pass a ban on, to end the sales tax on diapers and period products. So stay tuned for more work around that. Plug out there to the universe is I would like to also see in our schools, both private and public, that there are dispensers in every bathroom of period products. I think this is a basic issue of dignity of girls. If we were able to get masks and PPP out in places, it shows us what we can do when we put our mind to it. So that's another call to action if you want to help gather that or help advocate for those issues. You can be involved with the Office for Women if you scan the purple flyer, and it has a QR code. You can go to our website and you can sign up for our newsletter. Lastly, I will say I didn't talk a lot about gender-based violence, and that's one gap here, but we are going to be bringing in UGIMA, which is the National Center on Violence Against Women in the Black community, to do a training. And so day one will be for system providers to look at things like implicit bias and how we can improve our approaches, very much targeted at reducing that rate of homicides of Black women in our community. We are also going to be focusing more on missing girls and women who in our community have been disproportionately Black and brown girls, and those families need lawyers. So stay tuned, because we hope to be partnering with area organizations to do a training, a CLE of people who might want to be pro bono attorneys to assist families in those cases, sometimes when they might need advocacy. So those are a couple calls to action: period products, CLE for helping with missing girl cases, and all the other initiatives I have laid out for you.
Maria Wilson is joining us here today. She's a University of Louisville grad in Justice Administration with a minor in Art Communication. She got her master's in Legal Studies from Washington University in St. Louis. She has pursued many different avenues in her ultimate passion of advocating for those in need, which include her story featured in a book written on behalf of Family Scholar House, Stories That Define Us. Maria's passion for advocacy and leadership led her to addressing the legislature on Capitol Hill regarding Affordable Housing Act. Leadership Louisville Ignite graduate, presenter at the annual Family Scholar House Luncheon, former president of Cards for Freedom Human Trafficking Organization. She serves on local speakers bureaus and social justice ministry and social justice point of contact for local news organizations. So she is in the know on what's happening in Louisville and a lot of social justice things. Maria is a graduate of the Family Scholar House herself, and she has now gone on to work for them as director of affiliates, supporting those who are now walking in the same footsteps that she once did. When Maria is not working, she's still advocating as a minister at West End Baptist Church. All in addition to being a superstar sports mom to 5 boys. Wow. In her own words, she is determined to be a success, not a statistic, so that God may get the glory out of her life. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
When you say 5 boys, that hits different. It's really different. So first off, I am just so grateful to be here. Thank you for allowing, and to just be here with Gretchen. I mean, I'm like, oh gosh, I have to come after Gretchen. She's amazing. So thank you for all your hard work. She does so many great things in the community. First time I met her was in my undergrad years when I was at the University of Louisville, and you really inspired me. She pushed me to really go towards, attack this issue with human trafficking. And so thank you for all your work and everything that you do. So I'm here to talk about Family Scholar House. I just want to go over the mission a little bit. A lot has changed with Family Scholar House. I normally don't have to read, but our numbers are changing tremendously. So I'm going to read the mission that we just updated recently. The mission of Family Scholar House is to end the cycle of poverty and transform our community by empowering families and youth to succeed in education and achieve lifelong self-sufficiency. Each year, we have served disadvantaged residential and non-residential single moms and dads and their children with a comprehensive care to meet them where they are and empower them towards educational, career, family goals. Our residential families have often experienced poverty, unstable housing, and most often domestic violence. We also serve student parents, former foster youth, and other vulnerable populations as they prepare for careers. By getting education, they need for the workforce. Whether it is a one-time call or ongoing support, we can help. Our programs and services are responsive to the needs of the individuals and the families that we provide for all ages. So, how does Family Scholar House meet these needs? How do they go about all of these things that they do every day, basically? As I was sitting there, I was texting, I was like, what are the new numbers? Because they're constantly changing. When I started at Family Scholar House, we had one location and they were building another. We now have 5 First off, let me ask, how many people are aware of Family Scholar House in the room? Anyone? Everyone, almost. Everyone kind of has an idea. So they started with 1, and now we have 5 locations just in Louisville, Kentucky. We are now, I'm so excited to say, we are at between 9 and completing to 14 affiliates, which means that they have taken the program to other states all over the world to start. So we just had a praise report from Phoenix. They're doing phenomenal in Phoenix, doing the work there. I have a call later on today with Cincinnati. They're doing one there. We have one in Houston. We have one in Florida. And it just goes on. California, Minnesota. So they're all taking the work that's done here, and they're taking it to their communities, attacking the issues that are there. So we go about this by, there's an intake process. The intake process we use is via the Response Center, which is our fastest growing area now. We didn't have a response center before, but because of the overflow of just calls that we get all the time, and the need has been such a great need, we actually took 176,000 calls in the response center last year. So what's so important about that is that the response center used to just be for our families, but I'm glad Gretchen talked about the need that's happening all around the community. So now what the response center is now attacking is issues. Like, so if you call, maybe you don't need housing. Maybe you're not a single parent. Maybe you're just having whatever barrier is keeping you from accomplishing whatever goals to meet. We talked about the difference between work and a job. Work is purpose. Job is just what you're trying to do to make ends meet. So our job is to push them towards their work. What is your purpose? What are you wanting to do? Not just basically starting a job. The best thing we used was Valvoline. If you work there for a year, you can make 6 figures. However, if that's not your purpose, you're not going to stay there a year. So the money, it has no value if they're not working in their purpose. So we help them find it. So when they call the response team, they all work from home. They're all over. They take the call. It's from Monday to Saturday, and it's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. They take the calls and they do the intake for each individual. The important thing about that is that they take data. They ask them intake questions to find out exactly what's going on in their homes. What is it that you need? What do you feel is stopping you from getting to where you need to be? With this information, we're able to get data. So that helps us with universities. That helps us get actual data to figure out this community, this area, this zip code is experiencing these barriers. This is what we need to focus on. This is how we're able to attack the issues in those areas. So the response team is like the first contact. With that, we're able to follow up with these individuals. We have a system where we can take notes, so whomever is reaching out to them can go back to those notes and see exactly where those individuals are at that time. Like I mentioned, that's one of our fastest growing areas. So after we are done with the intake process, the community needs questionnaire is used for the data, like I mentioned, but also it helps us to figure out if they really, really need residential. Sometimes they may not need residential. Maybe they just need to figure out something with their class, with their teachers, with their professors. Maybe they're experiencing childcare, which childcare has been an issue. We just had a discussion, I think it was a meeting 2 days ago, talking about like how people are waiting weeks once they apply before they can get childcare. But how many jobs are really going to wait weeks before you can get childcare before they can start? So we help with pushing those issues and getting with the right people so that we can find the root of the issue to help these individuals get what they need so that they can be successful. So then once they are able to accomplish those goals and complete the community needs questionnaire, they now go to the orientation. The ACEs is so important. The ACEs is basically just the childhood history, knowing exactly not only about the mother's childhood history, but just also the child's childhood history, to understand where they came from. We do trauma-informed training. You have to have a trauma-informed training and a domestic violence training before you can do an ACEs with the program, because we want to make sure that they're trained. Once people begin releasing this information, they begin talking about their traumas, that can stir up something. You have to be able to know how to address these issues once they're issues and they're reliving these things. So we, with the trauma-informed trainings and the domestic violence trainings, we're able to basically see where they are. Maybe right now they don't need what they think they need. Maybe right now there has to be something a little bit deeper, whether it's therapy or whatever. So we are able to push them into that direction, but then we also know how to help them in those areas. After they complete the ACEs, they are now in a predicament that they can now earn points. So the Family Scholar House, we have 3 different ways of becoming a part of just the Family Scholar House side of it. And I'm just gonna talk about that today because I don't have enough time. So the Family Scholar House side of it is single parents. Moms and dads. We have, of course, the majority mothers, and majority of them have experienced domestic violence. They have just been the lack of stability and all of these different things. So we have these parents that come to us and they express that, hey, I would need somewhere to live. These are my issues. These are my problems. Once they express these things to us, we don't want to just give it to them. We don't want them to have a sense of just entitlement, like I just want this, I want this. But how bad do you want this? Do you want to really earn this? We want to see, are you willing to prepare yourself to get to where you need to be? So we have workshops in place, which that is something that if you all could definitely help out with, and if you would like to donate your time. And the way of doing that is just doing a 5-minute video talking about whatever your topics are. It can be family court, it can be whatever is like your passion, even professional dressing. A 5-minute video, and we actually publish these online so that they can take these, watch these videos, and they're learning something. Maybe it can just be something as simple as like about your story, how, your aspirations, or whatever you would like to be or do to help out with that in that area. So we allow the participants to do it online since COVID has hit and it's kind of messed everything up. So we allow them to do those, all those online. So as they watch these videos, they get points. There's like a point system. So it automatically goes to our system. Every time they do a workshop, every time they complete something, every time they do a check-in, they get points. So it's not a traditional waiting list. They basically work their way up so that when there's housing available, they will be the first call. So that gives them an opportunity to see the first initial work, putting in the work to get to where they want to be. Once they accomplish this goal, we are able to help navigate with them using our academic coaches. So you have an academic coach, which is so important to making sure they're in accredited classes. Also, you want to have your advocate just with you, just to help you navigate through life. Maybe you don't know how to apply for food stamps. Maybe you don't know how to get Medicaid. You don't know these things. So they're able to help them, take them through the steps to get to where they need to be. If they're not looking to get residential, they can still get the assistance. They can still get the help. They can still get whatever they need from us, as long as they stick to our program, which is maintaining a 2.0 GPA. We used to be where you had to get either a 2-year or 4-year degree, which has changed now. You're able to get apprenticeships, which I have some information over there for you all. And also you can get a trade. So it gives them an opportunity to work in different ways. We have the young adults, not only just the single parents. So those are foster kids that have aged out of foster care, which is so important. I think that, and I'll share a little bit about myself. Again, I'm a graduate from Family Scholar House. At that time, I only had 2 kids, surprise. And so I don't know where these other kids came from. No, I'm kidding. But I only had 2 children at that time. And myself, I was in an unhealthy relationship. And I started with the program with Family Scholar House years and years ago. I was like dinosaur years. And when I started there, again, my son was, he's 22 now. He was 12. And my other son was 2. And he's now 14. He's older now. When you have 5, you just forget. Everyone's just whatever. But now, when I started at the program, I think that one of the bigger things that stood out to me were the workshops. And I think that that is a great tool that can be used and you all can definitely help with. The mentoring, just even doing, whether it's the speed mentoring at Family Scholar House or if it's just mentoring. I think about, Krishna Tibbs. I'm sure everyone knows Krishna. He's awesome, amazing. And he gave me a chance. Like, he let me sit in, and I realized, like, I think family court is a little too much for me. But you don't know these things. I remember, and when I was in undergrad, I followed Derwin around, and I was like, intense. criminal court, you know, so, but you don't know what you don't know. So giving everyone an opportunity to just get a glimpse at what they're doing. Let them explain to them what you do. And what I found, honestly, going to court and just seeing different cases and seeing, I saw it when it was at court. And so my passion is, what can I do before it either gets there? Like, I had like this passion of like, you know, we would sit in mediation and I'm like, I feel like I'm home navigating my kids. Like, this is insane. And I'm like, well, what can we do before we get to this point? Like, before of all the fighting, and so that's what gave me the passion of behind the scenes and coming back to Family Scholar House and being able to have these conversations, and maybe there has to be some type of co-parenting therapy, or, you know, just to be able to get behind the scenes. So my passion came from someone giving me a chance and someone seeing something in me. I'm grateful for Family Scholar House. Kathy, I stick very, very closely with her, and she's taught me a lot. So, you know, our appeal to you all today, I can go through all of the things with Family Scholar House and all that we do. We're doing amazing things all over the place, but really it starts with us. Everything starts with us. If we all come together and we work together to make a difference, I tell all the time, making the difference to say, you know what, I believe in me because you believed in me. So now I can go out and talk to the multitude of people. And now I mentor people. I remember Mayor Fisher and I were at a speed mentoring together, and he looked over at me and he said, you were on that side of the table, now you're over here with me. But it only happened because someone believed enough in me and would take out the time to talk to me, whether it was mentoring, whether it was donating to Linda's Closet, a suit, shoes, accessories, or something of that sort. The highlights for Family Scholar House is 62,007 family support academic career coaching sessions. So that's 62,000. This was last year. Their group workshops was 2,634 workshops, and there were 71 graduates in the midst of the pandemic. There were still 71 graduates. Households served were 66,716. We're currently serving 247 single parents, and then we have 32 young adults. So, right now, the only thing Family Scholar House is really asking, just doing the videos, 5-minute video, that will go a long way. Donating to Linda's Closet of just clothes, just simple professional clothes. And I wanted to add to the clothes, I think sometimes we can give people things, but we don't tell them what to do with it. So we have to take out that time to be able to just explain. I talked a little bit again about myself. You know, my mother, she lost us to the system. I went into foster care. I had to Google how to go to college. I didn't even know. And you know I didn't know because I ended up in Peoria, Illinois. Okay? From Jacksonville, Florida. Okay? Like my first winter, I had a pot of hot water trying to get it off my window. And the guy was like, no, don't do that. So, you know, I did not know, but someone took out the time to tell me. They saw more in me than I saw in myself, and they took out the time to tell me. And, you know, we talk about all the accolades. I was just talking to my friend. I was like, reading my resume, it's just like, I don't want to talk about myself because I know that it's just grace that I end up here. And that is my theme. Anytime I say it, I refuse to be a statistic. I will be a success. I was a single mom, and when I believed in myself and I understood my own value, my husband and I got married. We're going on 10 years of marriage now, and we broke that generational curse. My son, he is 22 years old. He's doing a phenomenal job as a strategy project manager over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, doing a great job. My other child that was with Family Scholar House is now leaving to go to high school. Well, he's in high school, he's in middle school now, and he maintains basically a 4.0 GPA. But it all came from stability, and it came from the community. It's family at the end of the day. So you guys will start hearing more about family because we're going into family. We're rebranding right now, and we also have Wine, Women, and Shoes coming up. If you all are interested in it, we have a few tables left, so please let us know. It's going to be in March, the first week in March, and that will be a great event to also learn more about Family Scholar House. So I hope I hit everything. I know it was a lot. I was trying to talk fast, but I want to give you guys an overview, so I guess we're going to wait for questions.
It's news to me. I didn't realize that Family Scholar House participants, you had non-residential participants as well. So do you follow them with the same, so how do you do as I understood Family House residential participants, there's someone that a counselor, a high school counselor that's in the building with them, or not high school, college counselor, therapists everything that they need right there, and you replicate that for people that are more spread out?
For the ones that are not residential but live in Louisville. So the way that we do it is still, we utilize Salesforce. So when they call in, we're able to take their information. Although they don't live on campus, they still have a advocate that's with them, that they're assigned to. So that person is still going to be assigned to them. They'll still have that person that works with them. Family Scholar House has now, I believe, don't quote me, it's between 54 to 57 full-time staff now. So that we're able to, they're able to go out into the different, basically campuses all over Louisville. And those advocates, we have gotten a lot of academic advocates, that's what we call them. So, and they actually work with them individually. So you'll be assigned to one, whether you're a resident or a non-resident.
So I'm curious about any thoughts you all have on JCPS and girls in JCPS in particular, and what's being done that's good for girls in JCPS and where some changes need to happen. Any thoughts on those?
Well, so what we have been doing, so what Family Scholar House is trying to do, like we utilize workshops. The workshops are, because it's such a focus, so for the residents and non-residents, we try to do things, and that we have been building, we have relationships with JCPS, so we utilize people that are on our board and basically doing the workshops that for the residents, non-residents, and those that are looking to become residents. So we don't have, right now, I don't think that they're working directly with JCPS because they're focused on just those that are clients at this time, residents, non-residents.
I think the issue of girls and I would say non-binary kids and also boys, frankly, but you know, when we're focusing on girls in particular, safety, the ability to learn is predicated on a sense of safety, right? So you think about the most vulnerable kids who are already experiencing trauma in their home, trauma in their communities, gun violence, or they are transgender kids, they're very vulnerable. And I still don't think that our schools have embraced that concept that all of this is holistic. And that's not to say blaming it on any school, it's our culture. If you look at gender equity, we separate out everything else. Like, you know, you go to a place and there's toilet paper. You don't have to bring your own toilet paper, but you do have to bring your own diaper. You do have to bring your own tampon, right? Like things that are impacted by women are always seen as something separate. So things like prevention of human trafficking, prevention of dating violence, responses and bystander intervention, things like Green Dot, which is a primary prevention of sexual violence that could be deployed in all of our schools. I think those things are sometimes seen as extra rather than central. But if you're a girl, and in particular a vulnerable girl, a girl who's more likely to be harassed, such as a transgender girl, walking around in that space, that is central to your education. So I still think we need a big shift. Period products is a big, to me that's a low-hanging fruit. We could make that happen. Because what does that say to girls? That says, you know, you matter, this space is for you, right? And so I think we could do a lot more with schools, but that's connected to the work, you know, the Bar Association has done about lactation rooms in the courthouse, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing that these spaces are often constructed not for girls, not for women. And what does that do on so many levels to shrink us? And what potential are we holding back? Like when you speak, I think about what is all the potential of the Marias that didn't have those doors open?
Right.
Like what are we holding back? So
when Gretchen talked about the Girls' Day, I feel that that should be something that should be normalized. Like if we normalize those type, so it's so hard to say like JCPS because it's like it's us, like really. You know, I think that's why that was a struggle for me because it's really like it's us, like because that school is only open from this time and it closes at that time, but these kids are still out here, and so what are we doing as a community to have these type of opportunities quarterly? You know, not just once a year, but they have to have something to, and like I said before, the analogy I always use is that you can have a broken car in a garage and you can have amazing tools and the instructions, but if you don't have the instruction manual that can actually be read, it doesn't matter how good the tools are. The car is still gonna be broken. So we have to be willing to be the instruction manual for the tools for the things that are broken.
And it's just like this messaging of female as other than and girl as a deviation from the norm. And we're at a great public school, and it's a good experience, but those things seep in, and who knows how old and dusty that question set was, but I just think about all of the messages our kids are getting that's the deviation. So to hear both of y'all talk about normalizing it, integrating it, it's not this special office. I mean, it is, but it should be the fabric of our community.
Yes,
So.
I agree.
And I want to give a shout out to Nyree Clayton-Taylor, who's Teacher of the Year and is also head of hip hop learning. I think I'm getting it wrong, but works with the Real Young Prodigies. So she works for JCPS, is doing transformational work on hip hop education empowerment. So the group of young boys and girls, I should say youth, did the Crown Act, which was on hair codes, which disproportionately impact Black students and limit their sense of, that they belong and that they can thrive in schools. And they are continuing to do work. So I look at glimpses of people who, we have such strength already in our community. We just need to then give those folks lots of resources and lots of space to innovate. And that's what I think the city can do.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on something, and I know Gretchen does not remember this because it was so many years ago. But Gretchen and I had no. But we had coffee one time, and maybe I was still an undergrad, but I didn't see myself as doing anything. And she said, "Have you ever heard of Emerge?" And I was like, "What's that?" But she was the first and only person that introduced Emerge to me. I'd never heard of Emerge before at all. And I think that those are the opportunities that everyone should get. Like when we have these meetings with the young, they're young, but if we embed that in them now, we talked about Emerge, so when they get to the point that they're like, hey, I want to do something different, I want to make a difference in the community, I can do it. Because I always say, if you have no scars, you have no story. The things that you've gone through is what's going to make you even greater. But they feel I'm not qualified for this because I've been through this, in which they don't realize. We see it all the time. Carissa Phelps, which is a really good friend of mine, she's been through a lot, but she allowed what she's been through to make her even greater and impactful in the community. So I think it's important to give them a platform to talk and speak their truth, and you'll be amazed that, 67% of people in the world experience trauma. So if 67% of people in the world experience trauma, whether they talk about it or not, how much more healing would it be if we have an opportunity for them to be able to live through it and allow it to be a testament for them?
Gretchen, my question for you, what do you see any differences with the new administration coming in? You're in an interesting spot having been at your office and then moving into a new administration. Can you talk to that a little bit?
So I'm very excited. I think that, and I'm very excited too, because I still feel very new back to Metro government. So I just was brought in January. And one of the things I wanted to say that was very important that happened in the last administration is that this office was moved because of a lot of advocacy by Tina Ward Pugh, who was my predecessor. We all build on each other, right? We all lift each other up, to move it into the Office of Equity. What that does is it's in the mayor's office, where it remains under Mayor Greenberg, and it is integrated into efforts on racial equity, on LGBTQ equity, and connected. And I'm very excited about what is to come. We're just in the early stages of the administration, so I don't know how broad and how bold we'll be, but I know that Mayor Greenberg has talked about, well, first of all, he interned with this office. He knows it very well, which is great. But he also has urged us to innovate and be bold. And that is very exciting to me because I think that's what we have to do. We have to take some calculated risks to make some big investments. So and I think we need to start, I think middle age is very freeing. I've started to weed out what doesn't really matter, and I think we need to ask for what we really deserve. What would a world look like where girls and girls of color and immigrant girls and women can thrive, and just how do we get there? So I'm excited. Anything new is a new opportunity. When things shake up, I think there's transition and change. And I'm excited because there's amazing work being done in this community by women. And I think there's a lot of energy right now coming out of the pandemic, both the struggle for racial justice and the acknowledgement that you can't do this work without a child care infrastructure. I think there's a ripe opportunity that we have to get right in this city. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions before we wrap up?